This episode on Monster Quest. Wait, I don't know what that was. I just woke from a fever dream. Welcome back to Indecent Composure. Oh, shit. Well, shared delusion, I guess. Wow. What are we doing this episode, boys?
Well, we're gonna talk about cryptids, and we have
What are those? Like
I love cryptids.
ids that are crypt?
They're cryptic ids. Yeah.
So
yeah,
yes, makes sense.
So let's get into it.
You have your two normal hosts, Aiden, which is me, Gibson, which is this dude.
Yes.
And then you have our unofficial third co-host, Eric, who is back for another episode.
Yeah, I basically told them because they wanted to do cryptids, and I was like, I need to be here for cryptids because I love cryptozoology. I love weird shitology in general, but cryptozoology I really love.
Yes, and we basically all agreed that without Eric, this episode would fucking suck because it would just be me and Aiden going, "Wow, them foot bigs are weird, huh?"
Well, I feel like I could
Yes.
have a lot of conversation, but Eric loves cryptids so much, I wanted to get him involved.
And he knows way more than we do.
Yeah.
I do know a lot. I would like to note to anyone who might be curious, being interested in cryptids is very different from thinking they're real.
Well, this is where I was going to start. I was going to start with, can we establish where we're all at with this topic in terms of believing
I'm
stuff?
a huge Godzilla fan. I think he is an awesome monster. You will not find me trying to convince anyone he's real. It's kind of the same
but he is,
concept.
though. He lives in the ocean.
Exactly.
Anything can hide in the ocean.
I love cryptids. I think they're super cool. I'm not going to say all, but I'm going to say most, the majority. All the popular ones are not real things. I think they're more cultural stuff.
Yes, I agree.
I would
concur.
like to make a tiny little intro to a little part of my past, which I haven't really talked about on any of my YouTube channels. And that's that when I first actually came onto YouTube, it was obviously as a viewer and when I was really young. And I literally... like, I want to say, and this is a safe estimate, like 60 to 70% of all of my YouTube usage was me looking at cryptid and, like, caught on tape videos that they had on YouTube back then. Like, that was my YouTube 2000, like, 2005 through 2008 experience for the most part.
I've already forgotten. Did we actually define what cryptids are?
No, we should do that, though.
We should do that. So
basically mythological creatures that people won't admit are mythological creatures.
Yeah, kind of like that. So they're animals that some people claim are real, but the evidence for it is pretty lacking, which is why most scientific community doesn't really support them.
So
that's definitely
your
the main
ones
interpretation. That's the main interpretation most people have. But, some people will just say it's any animal that science currently doesn't know of, but known from like folklore and stuff, which in that case would include some more real animals, because there are real creatures that have been found, like, from scientists hearing stories about them in villages and stuff, and then they go out and find them. None of them are popular, though. They're all like small birds and frogs and stuff, but they would count as cryptids if you throw that in their thing. Yeah.
The popular cryptids everyone knows are like your Sasquatch, Loch Ness Monster, Mothman, Chupacabra, those dudes.
Yeti.
Those people.
Those ones.
Yes.
Those are cryptids.
Yes.
Aliens are not cryptids.
No, aliens are bullshit.
well, they're equally very realistic and convincing and equally bullshit. Like, because, like, I'm totally convinced that there's other life out there, and even, like, life on par to us, just because the odds are against it, they're not being that, but, like, it's still, I don't think any of them has visited us. Like,
yes, exactly. Aliens as a concept, I'm sure there's other life in the universe. Aliens as men in saucers, fuck off. There you go.
Very different thing.
So... we have some, like, obscure cryptidy things that we're gonna go through at some point, and I have a couple fun things to talk about that are more specific, but I think we wanted to start with kind of talking about some of the major ones and kind of our thoughts on, like, the big cryptid phenomenon.
Well, there's no better big spot to start than with Bigfoot.
The most popular cryptid of them all.
Yes.
I have a figure of him on my windowsill as we speak.
I don't have it on my windowsill, but I also... Ooh! Yeah, I have I should bring... I'm leaving to college soon, and I think I'm going to take him with me. I totally forgot about it. Thanks for reminding me, Gibson.
You got to take a little piece of Washington State. Yeah, so two of us here, me and Eric, are both from Western Washington, of course, which is Bigfoot capital of the earth.
We're in prime Bigfoot. I've never seen one.
No.
But I'm in the habitat.
I'm from Colorado, which also has its fair share of Bigfoot sightings. It's not quite as hot as Washington, but it does have its own bit. It's Rocky Mountains, so there's a lot there, too.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
So
there's a large population of North American wood apes in the area.
So I don't know where we want to start with Bigfoot, other than Bigfoot exists. What do you all think of him?
I don't think we need to talk about what Bigfoot is, just because I think everyone knows. So let's maybe just start off on I don't know. Let's start with the Patterson Gimlin film, because why not? Because that's like the most popular piece of Bigfoot media out there.
Yes.
And this is actually very
interesting story around this shit.
Yeah. So. Everyone's seen, imagine that video of Bigfoot that you've seen. I guarantee you've seen it because, like, everyone on Earth has.
Okay, so where it walks by the stuff and it looks over its shoulder?
Yes.
Oh, and it has tits.
It walks by, it looks over its shoulder. It's got the swaying arms. It's really grainy because the video was taken in the 60s. And as Aiden said, it is in fact a female. So... You probably never paid attention, but you will now.
Yes. So, now we'll be sending tons of people to go look for the footage and see if they can find the Bigfoot.
They don't have much jiggle to them, so don't get too excited, but they're there.
Yes.
So it's called...
That's the prime reason we doubt the legitimacy of the footage is the lack of boob jiggle.
That is the prime piece of evidence. So it was taken, I forget when, sometime in the 60s, by Roger Patterson... and Bob Gimlin, which is why it's called the Patterson Gimlin film, who went out to look for Bigfoot, and they went out to look for Bigfoot, they saw one, they filmed it, they took the footage back, they're like, hey, here's Bigfoot.
The first and last people to ever just go look for him, find him, and come back.
Well, to be taken seriously, like as a big deal, because obviously people do it all the time now.
Yeah.
They're fake, clearly.
Now, this video is widely regarded by pretty much everyone as, even by people who don't think Bigfoot is a real thing like me, as the most convincing piece of evidence. Just simply
it's shockingly convincing.
It's so...
For what it is.
It's really good looking. I think it's a dude in a suit. But it's a really good imitation of a dude in the suit. But the biggest thing is it's so grainy. It's just hard to pick out fine details and stuff.
Yes.
Which is one of the reasons why it works. Because if it was any more detailed, I think it'd be a lot more obvious whether it was a suit or an animal. It's kind of in that fine grain area where it's hard to tell.
It's in that area where you get the little tingles up your spine as you're staring at it late at night and you have lack of sleep going on and you're really tired and you're like, I don't think it's real, but I can't quite tell.
The reason why I suspect it is a fake is not because of anything necessarily in the video itself, but because of all the events leading up around the video.
I agree.
First off, this was their first expedition. Like, they literally left to go find Bigfoot. I forget, it might not have been that day, but it was like a couple days before. Like, they went out and they found him immediately. Or her, immediately. Which I'm like, okay, that might be a little weird. Another detail that some people point out as to why it has to be real is the fact that it does have breasts and stuff. They're like, well, why would you put breasts on an ape suit? Well, if you go back and look at the reports of Bigfoot sightings before this footage came out, you will find people describing the Bigfoot they saw as a female and having breasts. And so...
Damn, I didn't know that there were some really burly homeless women just running around naked in people's woods.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. So
that's interesting, though. I didn't actually know that, like, the descriptions from sightings of that period,
there is
reinforce the design they chose.
There's one sighting, that happened, and then so it kind of makes more sense why they do that, why they would then depict it like that. But then furthermore, Roger Patterson made a drawing of a Bigfoot, of him seeing a Bigfoot for, like, wanting him to go out before he went out on this expedition, maybe like a year or so before. And the drawing looks extremely similar to the Patterson Giblin film.
Bestiality.
The animal in the drawing is the Patterson and Giblin film thing.
What a psychic genius.
So that is why furry. I'm like, all this stuff to me seems like it's just too much. It seems like it's too much to all be a coincidence. And furthermore, this video is from the 60s, and it's our best evidence of Bigfoot.
It hasn't gotten better.
How is it, if it hasn't...
Besides maybe Todd Standing.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I do agree with you as that being like the most convincing piece of evidence outside of Todd Standing. Because for me personally, I do get the criticisms of Todd Standing stuff. And I'm not trying to sit here and say that his stuff is real. But to me, all of Todd Standing stuff, and I mean all of it, is as convincing, if not more convincing, than the Patterson Gimlin film for me.
He has some very convincing videos. So
they are a contender. I don't think they're a little, for various reasons that maybe we'll get into at some point. They're not quite as convincing for me, but they're certainly the only other thing I would even consider as something that should be labeled the best evidence out there.
I would say so as well, but I think so Todd Standing, he filmed some Bigfoots in like really clear HD video. It's the only HD video of Bigfoots I've ever seen.
There's a documentary out there called Discovering Bigfoot if you want to watch it. It's a very fun watch. I really recommend it, regardless of what side of the fence you're on. Just if you haven't seen it, watch it. It's really interesting.
Yes. But the flaw in his logic is the reason why a lot of Bigfoot videos and stuff work is because they're blurry and you can't make out a lot of detail. Because these are HD, it's a lot easier to pick out issues with them.
And
so
in my
I have
opinion,
been able to. I read a whole article that I might send Aiden to put in the notes about kind of explaining why there's lots of problems with the animals he shows and why they're probably just heads, like head busts head sculptures he's made. Now, granted, they are really well made. That one especially is a really well made head sculpture. Like, out of anyone else, I think Todd Standing has put more effort into trying to hoax a Bigfoot thing.
Oh, certainly. They're really well done. But I think his biggest fatal flaw, in my opinion,
really well done.
Like, not only are there various flaws you can point out with either of them, but the biggest mistake I think he made, assuming that it's a hoax, is that, and this is the main reason that I don't really give much credence to him, because I haven't looked into him super in depth, is that I think there's just the two distinct ones, and they're just so different from each other, and they're not just different, one is way better than the other, and it's just like, there's one where if it was just the good one, I might be more tantalized by it and more intrigued, but the other one just looks so dumb to me that it kind of ruins the whole thing.
I mean, to be fair, some animals look really stupid.
They do, but
there
the first
is me,
one,
of
I
course.
think the one Gibson's talking about that looks worse. Like, that one, to me, flat out, that looks man-made. Like, the little fuzz it has on its face looks like velvet.
It's not
it doesn't look like
as
fur.
convincing as the other one.
I
but
think
I'll
I
just
remember
go.
which one
I'll
you're talking
briefly
about.
cover some of the issues
three
I
of
have
them
with
that he
them.
shot up close
Yeah, I think so. Or
Yeah,
something.
there's another one that's like got
through rocks.
black on it. That
It's the devil one that he calls it or whatever. Like it's got like a bear skin.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But
anyhow, Todd Standing
the
exists.
main, just to very quickly cover some of the issues, just so people know. I think one of my biggest things is the animals, the two models at least, because I'm pretty sure the devil one I think is probably a human with like face paint on.
There's no way that it's not a person face paint on it.
Because, and my reason why is because that one, if I'm remembering correctly, I haven't actually looked at that video in a while, that one's eyes move. Which brings me up to why I think
its eyes don't move, but you get a really good look at its eyes.
Yeah.
At least I don't remember them moving. I remember them being locked on, but you get to see like the pore, like all those like the little like tear duct and everything in the corner of the eye. You get to see all that. Like
it's clearly a real eye.
Yeah.
It's clearly a real eye. But on the other two models, their eyes never move, which I think is a big like they're always staring in straight ahead of them. They never dart to the side or move or anything. The animals never really move their head.
They blink very slowly in a deliberate manner that makes it seem like he wanted us to notice that they were blinking.
Well, that's not even the big thing for me. The most convincing debunker I've ever seen of any of Todd Standing stuff was the main head that he used. When it blinked, its whole like brow ridge moved with it. Like it was almost being like
because he did it
in some way.
He did it in post.
Yeah.
Like I think it's probably he filmed the video and then he used computer software to make it blink.
Oh wow, okay, so it's not even a practical effect.
Yeah.
That's
it's not even a
interesting.
practical effect because you'll notice that when real animals blink and when we blink, we do it, it's literally the blink of an eye. It's so fast that most of the time you don't even notice the fact that you're blinking. But
this is
thing,
why blink of an eye is a phrase.
It's almost like a wink, but like with both of its eyes, if that makes sense. Like he wanted you to notice it was blinking.
Yeah.
It's funny too because if you're going to do like a post like digital effect for it, it would look better if it was fast.
It would.
And it would be more realistic. It would just be better. Come on, Todd.
But yeah, I think those are some of the most convincing Bigfoot things out there. I know some other people, those are the most convincing videos at least. I know some people like Jeff Meldrum, who's the anthropologist who supports Bigfoot. He cites footprints as being his biggest evidence for Bigfoot, which is the other thing is, Bigfoot tracks, pretty easy to fake, but they are also something that Bigfoot tracks are reported in areas sometimes where it is genuinely like, well, why would anyone be out here making Bigfoot tracks?
Yes. That is fair. It is
also interesting.
I wanna kind of coax this conversation because we were talking about like the most convincing evidence. I wanna like spice it up a little bit by making my little opinion on Bigfoot because I think we're all kind of in the same boat here with Bigfoot for the most part. Like we're like, yeah, probably isn't real. Probably all these things are hoaxes, whatnot, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But
the more I've learned about Bigfoot, I used to be pretty like, yeah, maybe, but the more I've learned, it's kind of drifted more towards no.
I do find that the more information I receive regarding the whole topic, the less convincing it becomes.
Yes.
Which is obviously a great sign.
Which is why I'm going to spice it up with my hot take, which is that I am pretty strongly convinced that Bigfoot's real. And not that he still exists, but that he did at one point. And what I mean by that is that that something very similar to a Bigfoot existed alongside humanity. And I'm not saying I'm 100% convinced, but I'm pretty convinced that there's some tangibility to this. And what I've cited to these guys before, independently from this podcast, is that Native Americans have actually made like cave paintings and illustrations of Bigfoot. We're just going to call them Bigfoot because it's what it is, basically. with like a bunch of other animals. And the reason why I find it so perplexing is because you have like two different types of these like illustrations and I don't know what else to call them, like murals, I guess you could call them, or something like that, where they have these pieces of art or cave art that you can find, and some of them are very fantastical and clearly not real. Like you'll get things of thunderbirds and doing all these like crazy like ecosystem changing level event kind of kaiju level things going on, and weird abstract designs and whatnot. They're clearly, exaggerated. But then you have these other things where like you get all these normal animals just doing normal things and just people being people, and they just throw a Bigfoot in there like it's normal. And so the reason why I find that
is legitimately interesting.
It's like it's pretty clear that they were convinced that this was just a normal thing. Like to them it wasn't fantastical or anything. At least not in the depictions that I'm citing here. I don't have a lot of hard examples. If I find any, I can link them, but I'm not going to work really hard for it. You can look it up and find them pretty easily. The point being, I'm not trying to sit here and say, "Oh, Bigfoot's real." I'm going to argue it over anybody. But to me, I'm like, this is a pretty decent piece of evidence for me that, like, at least at some point, something very hairy and humanoid-like might have existed with people. Then again, this same part of my brain that is that's the what I'm trying to say is that's the single most convincing piece of evidence to me that anything like that might have existed. But at the same time,
I'd like to point out, how confident are you that they're not just making grizzly bears?
Don't steal my thunder here, Eric. Because what I'm going to say is the same part.
Because that's my thing is the only... I don't know Bigfoot cave art that well. Unfortunately, it's like probably one of the areas that I have I just don't know a lot about for whatever reason. But the one that I do know of, I think it's in California. It's called like the Hairy Man pictograph. I think when you learn about the background to it and the background of the culture there and stuff, it's like the only Bigfoot art thing that I actually know about. I think it's very obvious that it is a grizzly bear that people are saying is a Bigfoot because it's on two legs, but it's just a grizzly bear.
Here's what I'm gonna. The ones that I'm talking about, they're very clearly a Bigfoot. They're not a bear. The drawings are not a bear. But here's my piece of scrutiny against it, because just as convinced as I am that this is like the most convincing piece of evidence towards a Bigfoot existing at some point, I'm personally not really that convinced that they're still around if they did exist. But and also, it's not really that ridiculous to assume that a big ape could exist. I mean, it just. We have things already suggesting things like that existed.
It's a fairly reasonable cryptid as far as cryptids go.
I think, evidence-wise, I think Bigfoot really is lacking. But concept-wise, the concept of another hominid surviving this long really isn't... Because, I mean, we know even until recently there were, human relatives walking around. I mean, we know that human relatives did exist not really that long ago in the past. Like, Bigfoot, out of probably all the cryptids that we're talking about, and Bigfoot-like things, so like Yeti and Yowie and stuff, are the most plausible in concept cryptids, in my opinion. Not necessarily plausible in evidence, though.
Yes. And so what I was going to say is that, like, I think that the best counter evidence against my point that I brought up about how convincing these pieces can be is dragons and things like them, and the fact that cultures all around the world like come up with this same general concept completely independently of each other. And I think that it's not that ridiculous. Just as easy it is to say, hey, it's not that ridiculous to assume that a big hairy ape walked bipedally. It's also easy to assume, hey, maybe somehow in our DNA we're kind of like programmed to easily like missee just hairy people, and like and just come up with this general concept.
It's a point of cultural and folklore convergence.
Yeah,
that kind of matches up with things like dragons.
Our brains are programmed to see people even when they're not there. I mean, smiley faces are the best example. That's just two dots in a line, a curved line. But we mistake it as a face.
But it's universally recognizable.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So we can pick out the pattern of a human even when it's not there.
I think that easily.
That's something to take a note about.
It might sound cliche because, especially to Bigfoot believers, they might hate it whenever people bring up bears. But here's a legitimate thing. Like, I've talked to these guys about. I'm not going to get into a whole tangent about how the human brain works because we could talk about that in its own episode. But you can easily, your brain can play tricks on you. And if there's a bear just standing bipedally and you get barely a glimpse of it, but you barely get a glimpse of this bear as you look through like this little peak of the woods. Maybe it stands up because it hears the person, then it's like, oh shit, a person, I gotta book it, and it gets down, it runs off. But they only saw the bear standing up for a split second. Your brain can fill in that information and see literally, they actually see a person with hair. Right? Like, they didn't see a bear. Like, their brain actually filled in the gaps. And they're not lying when they tell you they saw an ape man, because they did see it. It just didn't actually exist.
Yeah.
And that's something I'd like to bring up with cryptids in general. And it seems obvious and it seems cliche to bring up, but I do think it's something that needs to be repeated. And that is that the proponency for misidentification and people seeing things that are not there, the general proponency for the human brain to fuck up in all sorts of fun ways is there, and it is prominent, and it is well demonstrated.
That is one thing I think is very interesting about the human brain, and obviously it relates to cryptids very strongly, is the fact that our brain is pretty darn good at determining what is real and what's not, like 99% of the time. But there's that 1% of the time when our brain just sucks at it. Like optical illusions are a great example of how what our brains see is not necessarily always what is real.
I
think spicy food's probably another great example. It causes you to feel as though your mouth is hot, but it's not.
Exactly.
So again, what we sense with our brain is not necessarily what is real. And if you see something
for all we know, our brain is way less accurate than we think, and everything we know about the universe is wrong, but we don't need to have an existential crisis this episode.
No, we do not.
Unless we want to.
And, actually, I think I can sum it up pretty quickly, so I will spit it out really quick just because I like how we're kind of getting into this. But as a perfect example to get really down to the nitty-gritty, if anybody's curious about it, is to quickly summarize the reason behind why our brain does this is I'm gonna put you out on a trail, you're hiking, and you walk across this bush, and one part of the bush is a little bit more shaded than the rest. And imagine it's like a half circle. The little part of the bush is a little half circle with two smaller half circles protruding on the right and left side at about a 45-degree angle off of each side. That little shape is like the general shape of the top of a head of a bear and its two little ears, right? If you glance at this out of the corner of your eye...
Just like me.
What your brain is going to do is, because all organisms have evolved, through natural selection to survive. You're hardwired to survive. And when there's all these delays between the electrical signals in your body and the firing of your neurons and your brain holes, that there is a delay there where your survival literally may depend on the lag that information takes to be processed in your brain. So as soon as your brain sees that general shape and you're already nervous, you're in bear territory, it sees that shape, your brain will literally auto-fill in a bear. Like, you can actually, your brain can trick itself into actually seeing a bear because it's taking a shortcut.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, the bear, quick, run, go. You don't have any time to develop, to actually decide if it's a bear.
Furthermore, our brains always like to immediately come up with, when we see something, we want to figure out what it is.
Yeah.
And so our brain, whenever we see an object, our brain searches through our memory files, to of all the objects that we've ever seen, to identify what this other thing is. And Bigfoot is always, whether you believe in it or not, Bigfoot is always in your brain as a possible object because it's something that you've seen before. And so if it's even vaguely in a Bigfoot-y shape, your brain can fill in it as Bigfoot.
Yeah.
You see with your brain, not your eyes.
Yeah, and I think people kind of severely underestimate just how vivid and convincing hallucinations
Just think
and
about how
misidentifications
realistic your
can be.
dreams are. That's a perfect example of how accurate your brain can be.
Yes.
That is
I
all
can
just
go
cognitive.
even farther. Once I have learned this fact about my brain, I start noticing times when I misidentify stuff all the time. And these are obviously the times when I was able to get a better look at it, and then I realized it was something else. I'm sure I misidentify stuff, and I just thought it was that all the time, and I never know. But one time, I was driving home, and it was wet and raining, and I turn the corner, and I see what I'm pretty sure, it was hard to tell because it was dark, a deer standing in the road. So I start driving slow and stuff. But as I get closer, I realize it was not a deer. It was the light of a street lamp reflecting off the water on the road. And so I think that is a perfect example of just how much your brain can F up.
Yeah.
And I have some personal examples too, because a common like paranormal sort of phenomena, and we don't have to get into it because that's a little not quite in the cryptid realm of things, but there's the shadow people where there's lots of reports. There's a huge whole thing about seeing like weird black shadowy like ghosts and figures. If I was a believer in that stuff, holy shit, I'd be convinced my house was full of them fuckers, because I frequently think I see like weird little shadowed figures. I think part of it too is the fact that I have a black cat who frequently teleports places and pops up unexpectedly. And so I think I see shit like that way more often than you'd expect. And it always, sometimes it's me misidentifying things, but almost always it's literally just nothing. And I turn my head and I'm like, how the fuck did my peripheral vision, like, what, how? Like, that is just there is nothing there.
Me as well.
It's you're impressed by like usually you're like, okay, I'm expecting some kind of general shape that would have given me that reference that would have made me develop that in my head. But then you look at it, you're like, there's fucking nothing. What the hell were you doing?
It's just a wall.
It is baffling and
why did
remarkable.
I see a stripper?
Now that's a specific illusion.
Exactly.
But there you
go.
But
anyways, there's our explanation of our skepticism of eyewitness anecdotes. And why eyewitness anecdotes are the our brief coverage as to why they're the
Indecent
worst
Composure,
form
single-handedly
of evidence.
destroying finding Bigfoot since 2020.
Eyewitness evidence, it's an interesting one because, as I think we've just covered, it's the most unreliable form of evidence. Not only because of the fact that our brains can mistake stuff, but because people can lie, they could make up details, blah, 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 blah. But
their brains
there's
can lie
something
to them.
There's something about having a person tell you about their personal experience that our brains as humans really respond to.
Yeah.
And so even though they are logically the least convincing evidence,
stories
kind of, I guess, sympathetically, for lack of a better term, they're very convincing evidence.
Yeah,
and
no,
so
argumentatively,
I think it's a point,
like anecdotes can be very, very powerful, even though they're kind of scientifically worthless.
I mean, look at the media.
So
all the news is always bad. We're always interested in the bad stuff, and that's because people are naturally attracted to, and we're instinctually, we will pay more attention to stories we hear that sound like it's dangerous or sound like it's something we should avoid. And it's like, oh,
dangerous,
our ears
sad, exciting, something powerful and a little unsettling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that's something just to keep in mind, that I keep in mind as I go through life, is always reminding myself, remember, Eric, these anecdotes are not super good. Don't do something just because someone told you that this is how it is.
Yes.
Gather more evidence than that.
I think we've established our opinions well on this topic. Do we have any other Bigfoot stuff we want to bring up while we're in the neighborhood?
So Yeti is clearly the sociologically superior version of the Bigfoot.
Okay.
Because it's white.
Yes. Actually, that's a common misconception that us Westerners have. When you actually look at most Yeti sightings, they're just Bigfoot. They're just Bigfoot. They're not white. They're just brown.
It's always the abominable snowman is like almost synonymous with Yeti to me. That is something that I'm guilty of.
Yes. No, I was guilty of it too. I remember first learning that most Yeti sightings are of brown animals, and I was like, "What? That's crazy."
Brown.
I thought they were white.
They're just Bigfoot.
So before we move on to Nessie, since we're on the topic of crypto hominids, I think Gibson has a bit of a list he wants to share with us.
Yes. I also have food, so if I'm not talking, it's because my volume's down and I'm furiously consuming pizza like a rabid animal. But before I consume things...
Mekong catfishes his profile picture on Discord right now.
It does fit really well, doesn't it? So,
yes.
In the neighborhood of Bigfoot, in the spirit of this episode, and our universal love for weird hairy ape men in the woods, I have put together a list of cryptids that I like to call not Bigfoot. Or alternatively named, is that Bigfoot? Well, no, but actually, yes. So, basically, these are those cryptids that have a different name. They're not called Bigfoot or Sasquatch, but their description is somewhere in the neighborhood of, oh, it's an ape man, and that's it.
Yes.
So,
crypto hominids is what they're grouped as, what they're called.
There you go. So I compiled a list of them because I knew there were quite a few, and it always cracks me up how many different things are clearly like you could just call it Bigfoot or something similar, but they have all these different names. And this list was very quickly, like lazily put together, mostly off of just Wikipedia and stuff. So there was not a ton of research put into this. And oh my God.
This probably is not an all-inclusive list.
Not at all. But let me just launch into this because it is nonetheless surprising, just the bulk of this. So we have the Barmanau, the Bucket Timah Monkey Man, the Chuchunya, the Fresno Nightcrawler, the Fauke Monster, the Gugwe, the Honey Island Swamp Monster, the Leloyan, the Maracoxy, the Mogollon Monster, the Mohau, the Momo, the Nagoyi Rung, the Orang Pendek, the Ohio Grassman, the Skunk Ape, the Wild Man, the Yeren, the Yeti, the Yowie, and we have this thing called the Almas, which has this list of alternate names just for that one. The Abnau, the Almasti, the Albasti, the Bekbok, gotta like that one, the Bayabinguli, the Golub Yavan, the Golbayavan, the Auliavan, the Kaptar, the Crawdun, the Saigik, the Saigiyik, the Okokachi, the Merigdi, the Molin, the Voita, the Windman, and the Zana. And these are all essentially Bigfoot in different places with small variation.
Words, we got to get to work because there's a lot of species out there that we haven't found yet.
Yes, these are all distinct taxonomic species.
Oh yeah, man.
Well,
so yeah.
So
speaking
crypto
of
hominids are everywhere.
Speaking of
you probably, even if you live in England or I don't know, Africa or freaking Antarctica, I'm gonna throw Antarctica in there. That you probably got a Bigfoot that you can find.
Oh yeah, I mean, if people lived on Antarctica, it would have its own version of Bigfoot.
Oh, 100%, 100%. It'd be the Penguin Man.
But yeah, speaking of drowning in cryptids, the second biggest one is Nessie.
Yes, Nessie. Well, I'd say the Yeti and Nessie are probably, in my mind, equal.
Are you separating the Yeti from Bigfoot?
That's what I was just about to say. Yeti's basically Bigfoot. So let's talk about the Loch Ness Monster.
So, can I just bluntly start and end this by saying that how the fuck do people actually think that Loch Ness Monster is a plesiosaur?
I don't know. Good night,
people's
kids.
brains are small and feeble.
Yeah, that idea is pretty ludicrous. Furthermore, Bigfoot at least has a lot of stuff going for it. It could live in an area that not a lot of people live in. It's got enough room. There could be a sizable population. Loch Ness is a lake. Now, granted, it's a really big lake. Well, it's a really long lake, I should say. It's only like a mile wide, but it's like 23 miles long or something like that. It's a really skinny lake because it's along a fault line. There's just not enough room in that lake, though, to support a population sizable enough to support a population of large animals.
So
Especially...
The crazy thing about it, too, is that while it's big, like, there's technically more than enough room for something as big as the Loch Ness Monster. The problem comes with the actual environment itself, because while Loch Ness is a big lake, it's also really fucking deep. And what I mean is that this thing drops off, like, instantaneously. Like, shallow little
waters. It's basically like
a
V.
Basically non-existent in there. And so when you actually look at the biomass in Loch Ness, you find that there is effectively nothing that lives in it.
Yes. Well, and plus, the water is super murky. I mean, like, if you swam in it, you can, like, only see, like, a few inches in front of your face and stuff.
It does not favor
there's not really
site-based hunting.
There's no water plants and stuff that can live in it because there's just no sunlight for them.
Yep. And
it's just way too murky.
And most, like, if any of you are familiar with aquatic life, like 90% of all life in aquatic environments live in the shallows, and that's because that's where all the stuff happens.
I mean,
it's where
Loch Ness is not lifeless. There are fish and eels and stuff, but there's not a lot.
Literally, eels make up more than half of all the fish in that lake.
And compared to the vast Pacific Northwest alone, add on to that all the other wilderness areas that supposedly have Bigfoot, there's a lot more of a probable range. Whereas
if we're going to...
Nessie is much more confined.
Yes.
It's
like shooting a plesiosaur in a barrel.
And furthermore, if we're going to go more specifically with the plesiosaur hypothesis, which I think is what people are most familiar with, how on earth would an animal that breathes air hide this well?
It grew
like,
gills.
Where is it coming up and breathing air? It can't be.
It's lived since the KT extinction, Eric. It evolved gills.
No, you see, actually, okay, in Star Wars Episode 1, right, where there's the dumb Jar Jar Binks fucking underwater city with the domes? Yeah, Nessie is actually part of a super intelligent plesiosaur descendant species that has started a new Atlantis at the bottom of the lake bed of Loch Ness that looks just like that. That's the truth that the government doesn't want you to know.
Stop giving people ideas, Gibson.
Oh, you're right. People will run with that.
So,
yes.
I actually want to quickly bring up my, pitch as to the real Loch Ness Monster, because I do think it exists in some capacity, like the Chupacabra. But if you're familiar with the Chupacabra, which I'm going to kind of spoil it for you, the only real Chupacabra is a mange dog, or coyote. Mm-hmm. It's not this alien, which is way cooler, but still. The thing with Loch Ness is that there's this awesome episode on river monsters where I think Jeremy Wade comes up with the best possible real Loch Ness Monster that's ever been pitched. I genuinely think out of the real sightings of Loch Ness Monster, he found the culprit. Now, it's a really fascinating episode, and if you really desperately don't want to get it spoiled for you, I'll try to remember to timestamp it. Let me note it. River or Loch Ness spoiler tag. I'll spoiler tag it so you don't have to listen to it. But the gist is that people who actually live on Loch Ness, so the people, not the tourists, not all the people who go looking for Loch Ness, like visit Scotland for it, the people who live there on the shoreline, whenever they see the supposed Loch Ness Monster, they never, ever see anything serpentine or anything with a neck, or even vaguely resembling a plesiosaur. What they see is a hump, something that looks like an upturned boat. And this is where the key component comes in, is that starts leading the little breadcrumbs towards the real culprit. And long story short, he ends up finding that it's actually quite likely that Greenland sharks, those really super old sharks that live at the bottom of the ocean are somehow getting in there into Loch Ness, and they're basically coming up to the surface every once in a while, and their backs, that literally their dorsal fin is so far down their tail that you can't see it when they breach the surface. They're just a hump. So they don't look like a shark or anything. And a lot of these things, like he suggests that like a lot of these things literally could be debris and stuff in the water that people are seeing. But if there's an actual animal behind, especially for the ones that are moving like against the current and where they like have skin and stuff to it, it's most likely a Greenland shark coming in there. The river actually that enters or exits, actually more appropriately, it's exiting the Loch Ness. It actually does raise up quite a bit. Even seal lions have been, or not seal lions, I think seals have been
seal
found.
Lions.
And seal lions.
The new hybrid from
lions?
JW Dominion.
Either way, seals.
No, you said seal lions. I love that idea.
It's a hybrid. It's a hybrid of the two.
It's just a lion in the ocean with like seal fins.
And it's actually more disappointing than you think, or actually more exciting than you think, because it's actually just a seal and an actual like plains lion from like the savannah that like bred together. And
that's what I'm envisioning.
Yes.
Anyways, the sea lions have been, or not sea lions, seals have been well documented to venture into the Loch Ness. And I think even dolphins and some other whales have been rumored to go into the Loch Ness because the river will actually raise up enough to let them come in there. So it's completely likely that any of these big things that people are seeing, and now even for a Greenland shark and all these other things, the seals and dolphins and everything, they fucking leave because there's no food there. So they literally, they can't even make it. A dolphin, a seal, like a Greenland shark, this thing that is literally designed to wait for food to fall to the bottom of the ocean, and it can wait years potentially between meals. It's like, yeah, fuck this shit, I'm out. Like they're not staying there. Like they've even checked like they have those DNA testers and for Loch Ness, like where they can like catch DNA and test to see if there's a certain type
you're talking
of
about the eDNA study. Yeah. So basically the eDNA study is where the scientists, they took water samples from Loch Ness in various areas. And so as animals and humans as well, as we go about our lives, we're dropping our DNA everywhere, basically, in our dead skin, in our hair, in mucus, whatever. You know, we're littering everywhere with DNA. And so what you can do is if you take a water sample and then you get all the DNA out of that water sample, you can figure out the animals that live there, basically. So when they do that for Loch Ness, they got lots of results such as, you know, the fish that live there and eels and stuff. I know they've done some of this stuff in ocean environments, and they found, you know, sharks and whale DNA and that kind of stuff. And it's a way that can help scientists identify what's living in an area without actually seeing what's living in an area.
They do this in the Mississippi River right now because they're trying to keep the Asian carp from migrating up into the Great Lakes.
Yes.
And so they've been doing that consistently to try to make sure they're not getting up into the
upper
I know
stretches. Some people also do it with like salamanders and stuff because salamanders can be hard to find. It's a very useful tool. It's a very useful thing people realize that they can do.
Yeah. So either way.
But anyway, they did it with Loch Ness, and they did not find any evidence of prehistoric reptile DNA.
Yeah. In fact,
I guess I should just say unknown reptile, because you would have no way of knowing it's prehistoric.
In fact, Jeremy Wade, if I remember correctly, he even did an eDNA test on Loch Ness when in that episode, and he didn't find even seal, dolphin, or Greenland shark in the lake at all.
Yes.
And so that didn't even help back up any of that stuff. So,
well, and something I'd also like to bring up about Loch Ness that I think is a pretty interesting thing about the way the lake is shaped is one thing that can happen in Loch Ness, because the sides and stuff are so sharp, when boats and stuff go through it, what can happen is the waves from the boat will like go off, they'll bounce off the sides of the loch, and then they'll come back and they'll meet in the middle. And when these waves meet in the middle, they look like a series of undulating humps.
Yes, I've heard of
this. And
this
happens fairly commonly. You can find pictures and stuff of it online. It's not even a super rare like, phenomenon. I remember listening to
thing.
One dude was in Scotland at one point, and he was like, I gotta go see Loch Ness because I don't think Loch Ness Monster's real, but I just gotta go see Loch Ness because, you know.
It's Loch Ness.
And he said that in his short trip while he was there, he saw that happen like 4 different times. It's not that rare.
There you go. Yeah, I think my theory on the truth of the Loch Ness Monster is that waves do that and logs float.
Yes.
And
but that's
that is
also
my
just
hypothesis.
Concept-wise, as far as evidence goes for Loch Ness Monster, all of it's pretty poor.
There's really kind of nothing. Because even
photo,
with Bigfoot,
how...
you know, with Bigfoot, the classic iconic footage is actually one of the better pieces of evidence. The classic iconic image for Nessie is literally been admitted to being a toy in a tub.
Yeah.
Not
only that, but you can just...
It was a thing they put out. It was in the lake, but
yeah, it wasn't in a tub, Gibson. It was a toy.
It was in the lake.
It was in the lake. But
I thought it was. I distinctly remember hearing it was in a bathtub.
No, because the image that you've seen is actually a cropped version of the larger image. And when you see the larger image, and you can see a better,
it is clearly in the lake.
Bigger sight of the waves and stuff around it and ripples. You can tell that the object is not that big. It's only a couple of feet tall, probably.
Okay.
So it is an object. It's just not. It's not a big object.
I don't remember exactly what it was,
it.
but yeah, it was just something they stuck out.
I want to say it was like tinfoil attached to the top of like a toy submarine. I remember hearing that it was like a little like submersible toy with just foil sculpted into the neck shape on top of it.
It was admitted to being a hoax.
Yeah. Well, and even like, because like we said before, people can lie and not tell true stuff. I think just looking at the photo and seeing how small the object is,
that's
personally
enough.
For me is my thing of like.
I mean, I think it doesn't look very convincing in a variety of ways, but also I do want to just say like it could be a baby plesiosaur. Like, you know, you never know. Like maybe Loch Ness Monster's been reproducing asexually. It's Jurassic Park.
We won't cover this. If you want to see a better. Because I do think that we should move on to some other stuff. If you want to see a good coverage of Loch Ness Monster evidence, go watch Trey the Explainer. That's his YouTube name. Go watch his videos on the Loch Ness Monster. Because he does pretty thorough job of covering the evidence and sightings and breaking all that down and discussing why, when you look at them in any kind of detail, they break it down really fast.
It'll be linked in the description.
They're not that good. They're not that good. It's Bigfoot, like we said, actually has some decent stuff and some decent evidence. It is depressing just how bad everything for Loch Ness is. Like, there is basically nothing good, even remotely
I don't
good.
find it depressing. I find it pretty helpful because, like, I don't have to worry about what, because like with Bigfoot, I'm convinced it doesn't exist, but like there are occasionally those pieces where you have to scratch your head and be like, well, fuck, that's kind of a good point, or like, oh dang, that one's kind of convincing.
With Nessie, it's just like, fuck that dumb sea monster.
Yeah, it's like,
just
okay,
like ghosts.
You can definitively say no.
It's just like ghosts. You can just say no. There's no debating. It's just it's not real.
There's nobody
Nessie.
you have to convince over it, right? Like
if
there's
likes
someone
you.
that like actually is trying to debate that it's real, then you know that they're so stupid. And so
anyone
far gone,
who's debating that it's a plesiosaur specifically, you can just laugh off. They clearly don't know anything about paleontology or paleobiology or any of. I mean, it's just ludicrous.
Yes, I agree. The odds of any animal of a extinct Mesozoic creature surviving 68 million years with no evidence in the fossil record of its existence is pretty slim. Bring up
with it just
people
being
bring up
essentially, you know, like one individual in one lake too.
Yeah.
Yes. And people bring up coelacanths as evidence that this can happen. Couple things I'd like to point out. Coelacanths live in the deep sea, okay? They're hard to find as it is. Furthermore, what am I looking for? Coelacanths weren't cryptids before they were found. They were just found, right?
Yes.
And
so they were just never cryptids, period. Like, you can't make it a cryptid after you know it's real.
Well, it is in the Safari Cryptid tube, I think.
No one suspected, no one was out there being like, man, I think coelacanths still exist, until they found one. They just found one.
Yes.
But getting more back to the why coelacanths aren't good evidence as why a Mesozoic animal could last that long, is coelacanths have really fragile, thin fish bones that don't preserve well. Not like a reptile, which have much thicker, sturdier bones that preserve much better.
Especially a giant long-necked plesiosaur.
Yes. And to top it all off, we have found Cenozoic coelacanths now. We found two. I'm pretty sure a Miocene and a Pliocene coelacanth. We didn't know about them when we found coelacanths still alive in the 30s, but since the 30s we have found two fossils of them. So they're not that gap doesn't even exist anymore for them. So,
well, there you go.
They were fabricated by the government, Eric.
Oh, right.
Well,
I forget about that.
Conspiracies
but since
abound.
we're on the topic,
I formally request Mothman.
Okay, we do Mothman first. Okay, Mothman.
What's the other one we need to do of the popular ones?
Chupacabra.
Yes.
Is probably
shit.
the
Do we
next
want to
most
do
popular
Chupacabra
cryptid
first?
after like Nessie and stuff, because it seems like a lot of people know of it.
Which one?
Mothman, he said.
I would argue Chupacabra is more well known than Mothman, but
well, it doesn't matter. Let's just do Mothman because he's cool.
Mothman is much cooler than Chupacabra. I agree.
Yes.
I like Chupacabra more personally, at least the alien version of it, like the one with the spikes on it and shit.
The crazy-looking Chupacabra is neat, but there's only one Mothman, and he's a Mothman.
Yes.
I will admit
Mothman,
that Chupacabra is a lot less interesting now that we know it's just a mange dog. But like it's a lot harder to you don't really see the alien Chupacabras much anymore.
No.
In 1966 through 1967 in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, the man-bird moth thing has been seen.
we got a dramatic narration.
So, Mothman's a really interesting cryptid because it was only said, as I just alluded to with my narration, Mothman has only been seen in about a 1-year gap in Point Pleasant, West Virginia.
It is a very interesting story, and
original.
This is something to me that just like the levels of potential, like mass delusion and weird other happenings and conspiracies built around it. It's just fascinating.
Oh,
it's just
Mothman is a super interesting cryptid. So the first ever account of Mothman, I forget what their names were, but it was this couple that was driving on a road at night, and they saw a large white, not black, as you might be imagining Mothman to look like, a white figure standing on the side of the road, and it had no head, but 2 eyes in its chest and wings. And then they sped up and drove fast to get away from it, and then the thing chased them and followed their car, and yeah. And that's the sighting,
isn't there
but then
accounts
over
that it like tore up the top of the car?
There's always
it
different twists of the story, but I don't think that's actually part of the original one.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it tore up the top of the car.
Because technically, there's like,
but when they
nowadays,
reported
ever
it,
since like the internet's been obsessed with cryptids, you like even cryptids like Mothman, which, like Eric said, like pretty much they've only been cited for like a 1-year gap. That's not true. They have been cited a lot more, especially recently. But it really lines up with the internet and when people were finding out about these things, and so it just kind of makes sense that then people are like, oh yeah, I saw Mothman too, and so you get all
the primary cluster of sightings is more temporally concentrated.
Yes, exactly the primary cluster. So that was what kicked off everything, and then over time Mothman, after he got his name, because at first it was just the bird creature something.
Yes.
It slowly changed to, instead of being white, to being black. And then you'll notice that in the original description, there aren't really any moth-like features. And that is one thing that's interesting about the original sighting, is it's not particularly moth-like at all. The moth-like features are added on after he got his name, basically. After someone was like, oh, let's call it Mothman. They started throwing moth features on it.
People
which, again, is some pretty good evidence
more insectoid.
Yes. Pretty good evidence that there's probably just people making stuff up and coming up with stuff in their heads.
Yes.
But there was this whole series of sighting stuff in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, but then all the sightings stopped with the collapse of the Silver Bridge. And the reason why is because Mothman was blamed for the bridge collapse. And it was kind of thought that after the bridge collapsed, he either caused it or was warning of it. After that happened, he then was like, my purpose is fulfilled, and left. So
now,
he's sounding a lot more like almost like a paranormal thing. What was that?
I actually have a question because I'm not fully knowledgeable on this exact piece of information, but do you know if it was a little bit later when they decided to, like, oh, Mothman disappeared after that? Maybe that's what happened, or did it just, like, did people immediately put that together? Because, like, maybe the reason Mothman sightings stopped was because people got distracted by the fear of a fucking bridge collapsing, and then they forgot to make up things about a Mothman.
I know the papers had something to do with it. I know the papers, the newspapers, I'm pretty sure were linking Mothman to that bridge for a while and stuff.
Okay.
And then blaming him almost immediately after and stuff.
There's a picture I remember of, like, a Mothman on the bridge. Like,
yes,
yeah,
but
I've seen that image.
We would like to point out, for those pictures, first off, they're in color, a rarity for 1966. And second off, you can see the time date stamped on them. They're like from 2011 or something.
Yeah.
And furthermore, you can tell by looking at the bridge that it's not the Silver Bridge, it's a different bridge. And the supposed Mothman figure on top is actually like these features that the bridge had on top of it that were starting to erode and fall off because the bridge was not in good shape.
Thinking of was there was one where, like, Mothman was, like, on it, and then there was, like, a second picture where, like, he was flying off of it.
Yeah, no, these are the ones I'm talking about.
I know the ones Aiden is referring to. Those are, like, much more obviously just fabricated, like, photos of it.
Those are the ones I'm talking about, where they have
like,
the time date stamp saying they're from, like, 2011.
If I remember correctly, it's been forever since I've seen it, so I might be remembering wrong, but I feel like they were, like, a pinkish orange tint, like, the whole picture. It was kind of like this, like, old colored picture, but then Mothman was, like, a strong, purely black silhouette with all this stuff that is not silhouetted.
Yes.
But for whatever reason, he's, like, a strong, just hard black silhouette with no
I have the
details.
Same memory.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's
but yeah,
obvious.
it's
Hold on, let me show you guys the pictures real quick. Let me get them up.
This would be mildly helpful. But yeah, it's a really interesting story. Just the fact that that it's so concentrated in that particular time, and it has this weird kind of fever dream quality to it that just makes me really tantalized and by it and fascinated with it, that it was this really short period that it sounds like an actual fictional story of, like, this was the year the Mothman attacked the town. Like, it's so, and there were other weird things going on. Like, I know there were, like, sightings of and encounters in that town with, like, classic stereotypic, like, men in black and strange, like, government officials and stuff. And there was tons of other weird conspiracies going on at the same time in that area. So it's very connected with a lot of other weird shit as well.
The men in black were trying to get Mothman back because he was actually an alien.
Yeah, Mothman.
Well, of
Mothman
course.
is definitely a very paranormal cryptid, to say the least.
Yes.
I don't think people realize how paranormal he is, but in a lot of ways, he acts a lot more like a demon or something than like a Bigfoot.
Yeah, it's a very supernatural thing.
Elvis never died; he just went home.
and just didn't come back out ever.
I can't find the... Let me see if I can find the flying picture. My internet's being really slow, so I don't know if this
is definitely one of them I remember. This isn't the particular... The one I remember was more of a side, almost like a perfectly side angle of the bridge, but...
I have definitely seen this picture
Why
before,
can I
though.
not find these pictures?
Are you remembering the same one,
Google,
Gibson?
you're useless.
Yeah.
Like the side? Yeah, okay. Gibson, I also might be convergently making a false memory out of very
This
vague
is
information.
entirely possible.
And also me describing it,
Depressingly
and then
possible.
your loose memory is like, oh yeah, Aiden's describing exactly what those little holes are in my memory that I'm just gonna now fabricate
Yes.
because that's how human brains
And
work.
this
I'm not gonna
all
put
circles
more-
back to our points about the human brain.
Yes,
I'm
we are
not
now
gonna
the
put any more effort
victims.
into this. But yeah. There you go. That's Mothman. It's a very, very interesting thing, to say the least.
I don't think we have too much to say about it because it's not like I don't even feel like we need to address whether or not there was a real Mothman, because the one mildly more credible classic sighting, if anything, is very easily blamable on some kind of big white owl. And beyond that, it's just it's such an absurd thing.
Owls have wings. That's one point.
Yes.
Second off, owls
Whoa.
have their heads are very much so the same width of their body, so you can see how someone might interpret it as just being part of the chest.
Yep.
They have red eye shine, which would explain the red eyes. And then as for its large size, well, as I think we discussed before, our brains aren't always reliable, and it's actually been really proven in lots of studies that our brains suck at judging the sizes of things, especially in really poor conditions.
Yes.
And so I can see how
Especially
in poor
when we're
conditions,
afraid.
Conditions.
on the road at night, you could easily interpret a large owl as being, I mean, they said 10 feet tall, which sounds extreme, but I honestly think that if you're seeing it really fast, it scared you and stuff, it started flying, it's dark, you don't really have a point of reference, I could see how you could accidentally interpret it as being really big.
Also,
if your
let's
brain
not
somehow
forget-
thought it was farther away than it really was.
Let's not forget the tangible fact that owls can get really fucking big too. So I mean,
Yeah.
Yes.
they can just literally.
It doesn't have to be a small owl at all. Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, I think I remember in the Monster Quest episode on Mothman, and Monster Quest was not always the best show in terms of actual science and proving useful information. But I remember in their Mothman episode, they actually did a really useful experiment where they made cardboard cutouts of Mothman and put them out in a field, not even at night, just in the day and in the twilight, I think. And they might have done it at night too. In good lighting conditions and poor lighting conditions, I think, because they wanted to
good. That's how you
compare.
That's how you do a proper scientific study. I applaud them. Having
And,
a control group.
and they just had random people come by and they told them hey, we have this fake, thing out that tell us how big it is. And I think, I don't remember exact numbers, but I remember the trend that it was very common and very easy for people to see these relatively small little cutouts and think that they were looking at something much larger.
I had a recent thing where this happened. So me and my dad were hiking recently, and he saw a large animal a distance away, and he was like, "Is that a bear?" And he was looking at it through my binoculars. He has old man eyes, so he couldn't really tell what it was that well. He was like, "I can't tell if that's a bear or something else." And then I look at it, and immediately I'm just like, "That's a marmot."
That's a marmot.
And then my dad's like, dad's like, that's a really big marmot then. And I'm like, "No, I think it's just a marmot."
Wow.
I think that's a perfect example of how we can make sizes, make things different sizes.
Yes.
Yeah.
We can judge the size of things highly inaccurately, and
highly accurate. I remember
adding
listening.
Poor lighting conditions.
I mean,
and
just
such
go into
amplifies.
any Call of Duty lobby with some juvenile middle schoolers and high schoolers. They're all comparing their dick sizes.
Now,
very inaccurate.
I didn't actually watch this. I heard someone talking about how in the Thunderbird episode of Monster Quest, they did a similar experiment but with kites to see if people could judge how big the kites were in the sky. And they were getting them wrong as well. But the reason why I bring it up is because I heard, at least in the podcast I was listening to, where they were talking about this, how one dude was just like not having it at all. It was just like, I think the kite's like 14 million miles long. And I'm just like, what the fuck?
That dude
like,
was not
amazing.
taking things seriously.
He was not
That
taking
guy
things
had his
seriously
head
at all.
screwed on right.
That's so good. That's what I would do if Monster Quest was. I might be a good sport and help them with their dumb experiment, but also I would be very tempted to just be like, oh, I'd say that sucker's about 50 meters high, maybe about the size of Godzilla, honestly.
Oh shit, it's Rodan!
Oh fuck, oh lord, he coming.
Oh, Rodan.
So I think that's about it for the Man of the Moth.
Yeah, the Man of the Moth.
Honestly,
So do we want to do the Cob of the Choop?
I feel like
I love the
Chupacabra used to be
So-
my favorite cryptid, but it's honestly like one of my least favorite to talk about now because the nice thing and the sad thing about talking about it as a cryptid, but also the nice thing like we were talking about with Nessie compared to Bigfoot is that like now that we have such a definitive like culprit to attach Chupacabra to, I have like the back in like the early 2000s even, I remember like so many people talking about Chupacabra, but then when it became really mainstream and everybody was really well understanding that Chupacabra were just like these mange dogs, you just never hear about them anymore. Like nobody talks about them because it's like, oh, now we know what they really were, and nobody's really making us
Just
shit
a
about it.
dumb coyote.
One thing I think is really interesting about the Chupacabra is among the cryptids that we've mentioned here, and probably among, I mean, I could be wrong, but I'm going to guess among all the cryptids we're going to talk about, the Chupacabra might be the youngest, because it's only been around since the 90s. It's really recent thing.
That's surprising, actually.
So it originated in,
The
I
Slender
forget
Man
which
is
year
younger,
in the 90s.
and I've just brought him up.
Slender Man, the
But-
world's most probable
Slenderman's
cryptid.
more of a demon than a cryptid, in my opinion.
Don't you break his hopes and dreams.
So
He just
the
wants 8
Chupacabra,
pages,
I
man.
forget
He does.
I forget which year in the 90s,
For
but I
toilet
know it's
paper.
from the 90s. The first sighting was from the first sighting was from Puerto Rico. And the first sighting does not depict the mangy dog look at all. The first sighting depicts the alien looking version of Chupacabra. So it's like a small bipedal thing with like spikes on it. Sometimes it's black. And then
That one's my
after
favorite.
its original sightings in Puerto Rico, it then spread to basically all the rest of Latin America, where it has had quite a diversity of appearances. Chupacabra, of those, the alien one and the mangy dog one are the two most popular that people have heard about. But like, there's ones with horns, ones with wings, ones with all kinds of weird, like there kind of can be anything. There's a vast variety of depictions about them.
And we were just talking about sightings. The original Chupacabra, like, period, was never actually a sighting. It was a sighting of corpses of goats, which is where it gets its name, the goat sucker. Because there was a bunch of goats
that's
that got
right.
killed, and they had like
I forgot about the
drained
lore
blood.
of it
I
sucking
forget
which
if
sounds real bad.
I honestly forget which came first, if it was the sighting and then the attribution to it, or if it was the sucking bloods thing and then the sighting happened. I forget which came first.
You may be right. Maybe the sighting did come first.
At some point, regardless of that, at some point they got linked together.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Now, one thing I would like to point out is for these animals that are supposedly drained of blood, it turns out they're not. It's just when you're as someone who hunts stuff, I'm a hunter. When an animal dies, the blood in its veins starts to clot. That's something that happens. It's not.
Whoa.
It doesn't stay liquidy in form. So you can get animals that are dead and appear to not really have blood in them. Like if you cut them or something, they won't bleed. But that's just simply because they don't have liquid blood in them anymore.
Yes.
Furthermore, I think you'd be surprised by how blood's an interesting thing, because sometimes you can be surprised by how much will come out of an animal or a person, and sometimes you're surprised at how little it will come out of an animal or person.
And
That
so,
blood
for
ain't
example,
never what you expect.
I unfortunately had my chickens attacked by something. I'm not too sure what, because I wasn't there to witness it. But one of them survived the attack, but she was injured on her back. It clearly like bit her there, and there was like basically no blood. Like, I literally was out in the field where the attack happened. I'm like, I don't even see any blood. There's basically no blood on your back. Like, it can be shocking how little animals can bleed. And I think that's something, is these are animals that are dying by other means, by stray dogs or something. The dogs just aren't killing them, and there's just not a lot of blood present. And so it looks as though they're drained of blood because the blood clots and because of the lack of blood in the region. But it's really just shows a lack of knowledge of how animals die.
Yeah. And I do think it's a bit of a theme with cryptids that a lot of times the act of assigning certain things to the existence of a cryptid often just demonstrate a lack of knowledge in some other field. Because it's a lot of times it is seeking explanations for things that can be more easily explained in a different fashion.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. But yeah, Chupacabra is pretty interesting for all those facets of it, and how it really changed so much over time from the alien to the mangy dog depiction.
It's a
which
very
aren't even that similar to each
inconsistent
other.
Creature.
It's very interesting, and of course, a lot of the origins to Chupacabra, especially with the original one, are theories that they are either an alien's pet, or that big radio disc, that satellite radio disc that they have in Puerto Rico. There's hypotheses that they're like a weird mutant creature that was made there, or an alien that was trapped inside of there, and stuff like that. There's lots of those kind of theories. Chupacabra doesn't really have a lot of, because it is so weird, especially the alien-like depiction. There's not really a lot of claims by people to make it a biological animal.
They just bypass that and go straight to Crazyville. I respect it.
Yeah, man. Those are the ones that are fun.
Yes.
What a thing.
Before we get into because we all will start bringing up more obscure cryptids that we think are fun to talk about. But one other big one, the last big one I really wanted to talk about, because it's actually my favorite cryptid, is the Wendigo. Because I fucking love the Wendigo. I think it's just fucking scary as shit. And
design-wise, concept-wise, it's A tier at least.
Yes.
The Wendigo is a very interesting one, because it's the one that's kind of borderline between folklore and cryptid. Because it is an actual Native American folklore thing.
But there are some more recent accounts of people attributing the Wendigo behind certain things.
I'm not really sure why, but it's become more prominent recently. I feel like in the past 5 years.
I don't know why it's the Wendigo and not talking coyotes, but
very disappointing.
I think it's pop culture, because also my personal favorite depiction of Wendigo is the really skinny emaciated person with the elk skull or the big deer skull on their head. But that is something that is actually borderline non-existent in Native American folklore. It's actually a thing. I forget the movie that it was introduced in. I'm forgetting it, but if you look it up, there's a movie that was made that featured a Wendigo, and it actually
is it called Wendigo?
License. It might be called Wendigo.
Also, I know there's a movie called Wendigo.
There's quite a few Wendigo movies, and there's 2 or 3 of them that are literally called Wendigo, and then there's I think this one was called something else though, but I might be wrong. But either way, it was the original, the origin of the really popularized modern design you see with the skull for a face, or the skull on its head. And when I was watching a documentary at my grandparents' house once that was talking about all the modern Wendigo accounts, or the things that people are attributing Wendigos to. I'm not going to get heavily into it, but there was like one where this guy went crazy on a bus and he like started eating another dude on the bus, and people said it was like the Wendigo possessing him or whatever. And like apparently he said things to his like relatives that he was like seeing things and whatnot, where he went crazy before he ended up eating the other dude. I think he ended up getting killed or something. I don't know. But like the long story short, people were blaming a Wendigo on it, and there's some modern stuff like that.
From my understanding of how it went, though, is I thought Wendigo was just it wasn't it taking over. It's just if you ate a person, then you became one.
That was
so Wendigo.
Like,
if you don't know, is linked to cannibalism.
Yeah, the more
all
traditional
fun things
one,
are linked to cannibalism.
The more traditional one was that. Yeah, but there's so many different things. It's kind of like the Chupacabra. Like the Wendigo is a name that was passed around a lot of Native American cultures, but its interpretation varies vastly depending on which tribe you go to. Like there was one on the West Coast.
Well, yeah.
I
That's
believe
just
it was the West
folklore in
Coast,
general.
where it was like this massive, like hulking thing, like literally the size of the Hulk or bigger, and it had like little antlers or horns on its head. And then there was like most of them are just literally just an emaciated person or like just a vague like humanoid demon thing.
Yeah.
And they don't actually have the antlers. And there is one other one where the antlers were vaguely on it, but a whole deer skull and that kind of thing is not really clear. Like any of the depictions that we actually see of it, it's a little bit more vague. But most of the time they don't possess the really cool skull and antler design. But yeah. I think Wendigos are cool though.
Yeah. The Wendigo is definitely one I kind of forget about because it's newer, but it's well, not newer, but been recently more prominent, and I didn't know about it for a while. But it's pretty interesting. I'd like to learn more about it at some point.
Probably another reason why it's my favorite cryptid is because it has that like that part of it that crosses over into folklore, so it's no longer just bullshit that people are just spitting out. It's like, oh yeah, this is like a part of like mythology and history of ancient like Native American rituals and stuff, and traditions and whatnot. So and I find mythology a little bit more interesting than cryptozoology, to be honest. But I mean, I guess I just like it more because I'm more of the fictional mindset, and mythology is a little bit more hard fiction than like what people are trying to pull off with cryptozoology, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. So it's like I find it a little bit more fascinating because I'm like, yeah, this is just all like just really fascinating bullshit that I can just like take and use as inspiration for like fictional pieces of writing. And then cryptozoology is like, look, the monkey man's real. He raped my wife last night. It's like, oh, okay.
Oh shit. Fuck you, monkey man.
Yeah,
Fun fact, most monkey men are sex offenders.
They are. I mean, they're monkey men. It's just you're adding more monkey into a human male. It's inevitable.
It's a bad idea is what it is.
Well, before my voice just cracked right there.
That was unexpected.
That was
it's okay. I talked through a burp earlier and didn't even mention
just
it.
Dropped.
So before we end up talking about our more obscure cryptids, which I think we're going to get to here in a second, I would like to briefly, or maybe not briefly, I'd like us to talk about. We kind of already did with Nessie, but the living dinosaur / pterosaurs. So Maculia and the Ropin.
The dumbest ones.
Oh my god. The Ropin is like unironically like the coolest looking cryptid, like period. But it's also like the dumbest
Ropin's
cryptid,
awesome.
like period.
It is. It's
the
both.
The Ropin's my favorite cryptid, just design-wise at least. It's such a cool design.
Design-wise,
so the Ropin, for those who don't know, it's a pterosaur. So imagine like a pteranodon. If you don't know what a pteranodon is, look it up.
Imagine a pterodactyl.
With a long tail. And it's black, and it glows in the dark. It's bioluminescent. Which is awesome.
So
it has Rhamphorhynchus teeth.
So basically, if Mothra and Rodan had sex,
got teeth.
And it
actually,
turned out to have a little
literally
bit more of
this.
Rodan's appearance.
Yes.
And it had more tail.
So yeah.
Yes.
So this pterosaur that is basically a pteranodon with teeth and a tail. It's
a hybrid
not only
pterosaur.
like glowing and like remarkably big, but it also lives exclusively off of dead bodies from people it digs out of a grave.
Yeah.
Yeah, it digs up human corpses and
fucking
eats
grave
them.
robber for some reason.
How metal is that?
I don't even remember the
it's
name
metal.
of the guy that came up with this, but like he is on
Jonathan
fucking
Whitcomb.
acid. Yeah, Jonathan. This guy is fucking batshit crazy.
That's true. It is remarkable.
I know.
Like-
he basically there is very strong evidence that unlike a lot of these other cryptids, which I guess for lack of a better term might be more genuine, when you look into the Ropin case, it definitely seems to me like it is a purposeful creation by one specific man, and that man being Jonathan Whitcomb.
Yes.
The most genius conspiracy of all time.
Which might be why it's so cool, because it was genuinely thought out a little bit. He put some
He was
thought
like,
into
all
it.
right, let's just go all out with this motherfucker.
Yes.
He was like trying to think like,
Yes,
what
but,
are the kids
however-
like these days? He walks into one of those kid toy shops and he sees the glow in the dark room that was really fascinating back then. He's like, oh fuck yeah, we're gonna do a glow in the dark pterodactyl.
But what's really interesting about the Ropin is clearly he didn't think, again, great reasons why it was made up. He didn't think that much about how its design and anatomy might influence its lifestyle. So the Ropin's supposed to dig up people's graves and eat them, right? So you might expect the depictions of the Ropin to have, I don't know, big hands and claws on its wings to help it dig and stuff. But no, it's got some teeny tiny little claws to dig. It doesn't have a big beak either. It's got a really skinny beak and stuff. It really matches
And
a
it's
lot
got
more with a
Rhamphorhynchus
pteranodon.
teeth, right? Which are like teeth meant to catch fish.
Yeah. And it lines up a lot more with an animal that should be like open ocean pelagic. Pelagic basically means that they live over the ocean. Or in the ocean. Yeah. It doesn't line up very well with its supposed lifestyle at all. And of course it glows in the dark, which gets to the issue of there are animals that are bioluminescent. That's a real thing that happens. But in tetrapods being amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals, there are no bioluminescent tetrapods. I don't think anyone's too sure exactly as to why that is.
Clearly you haven't seen what's down my pants. I'm so sorry.
Oh shit, it's glowing!
Oh fuck! Shouldn't have eaten that irradiated chicken feed after all.
Regardless of that, it is not known, certainly in any... It's not possessed by any modern day tetrapods. It's a little harder to know extinct ones for obvious reasons, but modern day ones is not known. Now,
You know what's
again,
funny
that
to me,
doesn't
too?
necessarily disprove. That's not a piece, as with a lot of evidences against or for anything, really. A lot of pieces of evidence don't necessarily prove or disprove anything. It's them taken with a bunch of other evidences that are important to consider. The fact that there
the
is
things
no
kind of
other
accumulate.
bioluminescent tetrapods, though not strictly 100% proof by its own, it is a point against it, if that makes sense. It is possible that it could still exist, but it makes it more unlikely. It's not like saying it's a jellyfish that's bioluminescent, because like lots of jellyfish are bioluminescent.
Yeah.
Well, one of my favorite parts of the Ropin, though, genuinely, is like when this dude was creating it, he clearly was trying to be kind of polite, because when you think about it, it's a very convenient cryptid to have around your island. Because, like, I mean, sure, it's not very polite in itself. It's digging up people's fucking graves, but it's not eating anybody. It's, like, not a threat to anybody. It's just like, chilling, and it's just fucking eating corpses, and it's like, it's just
very
connected
explainable
enough to
how you
people.
would never see it and stuff.
Yeah, like it's so connected to people while also not being a threat. It's like he was legitimately trying to be as little of an inconvenience to the people as possible with creating his cryptid.
Yes. And what I also love is you can find these interviews online that he did with some of the native, in air quotes, eyewitnesses, and I love them so much because they're not how you do interviews. It's a lot of basically, how big was it? Was it like 30 feet? Yes. Did it have a long tail? Yes. Did it have a diamond at the end of it? Yes. And he's basically describing everything he wants them to talk about, and they're just confirming that. And I'm
so what you do, sir, is you just say yes to all my insane questions.
Like. Exactly.
Describe in my words what it looked like.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. 100%. It's the most ridiculous and, in the same boat as Nessie, as it is extremely easy to say it's not real. But concept-wise, it's a really cool design. Of all the cryptids, it's the one I most want to be real.
Especially because it's not an inconvenience.
Although I would worry about its a possible chronic depression, given the fact that it's supposed to eat dead bodies and it doesn't have any of the equipment to do so.
That is
it makes its life very difficult. It's very hard for it to dig. It's very ill-adapted.
It feels very guilty about eating all the baby turtles instead.
Yes. Oh, and as far as evidence for Ropin goes, there's no pictures or video or anything. Nothing good. The only pictures and video that are around is one that's very clearly just a bird, and another one that's just some blurry lights that could be literally any light source in the world.
Someone threw a flashlight. Quick, take a picture.
Exactly. So, again, yeah. But let's move on to the Mokele-mbembe, which is the supposed sauropod in the Congo.
God. How much do we really need to say on this?
It's a sauropod in the Congo. I think we just
finished the conversation.
Yeah.
Monster Quest went to find it. They thought they saw a hole that it lived in, but it was too hot, so they just gave up to look at it.
Oh yeah, I remember that. The coolest thing about the Mokele-mbembe is just its name. The Mokele-mbembe.
It has a pretty good name, honestly.
But do we want to bring up, in regards to the Ropin especially, and Mokele-mbembe, the giant elephant in the room that is like surrounding them and kind of the purpose as to why they exist?
Oh, the creationist stuff?
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Dive in.
Because I kind of feel as though it's like talking about the Ropin and Mokele-mbembe without bringing up their connection to creationism is kind of like talking about Star Wars and leaving out Luke Skywalker. Like, it's kind of a big thing in regards to them. So basically, the reason why Jonathan Whitcomb, we're pretty sure, made up the Ropin is he's a young Earth creationist. So young Earth creationists think that God made the Earth 6,000 years ago, as opposed to like 4.5 billion years ago. And to try and prove this point, various young Earth creationists support the ideas of the Ropin and the Mokele-mbembe being these sauropods, or pterosaurs and stuff, as evidence of the Earth being young because they're still alive today. Like, in essence, clearly dinosaurs and stuff didn't go extinct that long ago because there's still some around. And therefore, evolution.
You could just use birds, man.
False, somehow.
Oh, wait, but then you'd have to believe in evolution. Never mind.
Yeah.
They
that's the other thing.
Is they don't, but not evolution.
It makes perfect sense if you don't think about it.
That's the other thing too with creation, that they don't just believe the Earth is young. They also actively don't believe in evolution because of they think God made all the animals 6,000 years ago, or at least most of them.
You just dumped them. Whoops! Here's a pile of animals.
When you really think about it, if you don't wrap your willy, you will discover that it's very easy to create life without protection. And when you really think about it, maybe God did accidentally make a lot more life than he needed to have around.
Well, you never know.
God just needed the big old condom.
Okay.
This was the mistake all along.
But obviously
humanity is just a premature ejaculation.
Now that's the quote of the whole podcast right there.
That's the name of the episode right there.
Humanity is just a premature ejaculation.
Wow.
Oh my God. Great.
I don't even know if we can continue after that.
Well, let's maybe dive into the obscure shit now.
Yes, now that we have acknowledged the creationist link.
Yeah.
Oh, and I just want to say that, like, the idea that even if they were still alive, that wouldn't disprove evolution stuff, because it just means that they survived longer than we thought, even if they were still around. It's it's kind of a flawed reasoning. But
it goes to show that they don't understand how evolution works, which goes back to my earlier point.
Yes, because they don't really want to learn how evolution works because they're already convinced that it's not real. But anyways, I just wanted to bring that up because I really felt that when talking about them, it's kind of a disservice to talk about them without bringing that up, because that's kind of a major part of their whole story.
So, anyhow, we have some obscure stuff to go through. I'm going to just take the liberty of going through mine first because it is going to take no time at all. I only have 3, and I have very little to say about them. I just have, like, the Wikipedia articles up.
I'm even just going to cut it down to just my main one that I want to talk about.
That's a good idea. So, my first one, I literally picked for 2 reasons. Number one, so it's called the Bear Lake Monster. And it's some kind of lake monster-y thing that has been spotted near Bear Lake on the Utah-Idaho border. And I picked it for 2 reasons. Number one, it has bear in its name, and in case you couldn't tell, I like bears. And the other reason is just because of one sentence I found on the Wikipedia page that just made me laugh. It's under Modern Bear Lake Monster Sightings, and the first sentence of this section is... sightings of the... There's a fucking typo at the beginning. Awesome. Sightings of the Bear Lake Monster continued even after Rich admitted that he fabricated the original sightings as a hoax. And there's something I just love about the beautiful simplicity of sightings continued after we learned it was fake.
that just
that's all I have to say.
The whole... We're just summarizing everything. Like, we just got the quote of the episode, and that just summarizes up the entire episode right there.
It really does. Sightings continued after we learned it was fake. That's kind of cryptids in general.
Yeah.
So this next one is a sea serpent.
Wait, but what was the Bear Lake Monster? Did I miss that part?
Oh, it's some kind of lake monster. Where? Let me find the description. The serpent-like creature inhabiting waters near Bear Lake seems. What is this? The Native Americans called it the water devil. Okay, so there is some older folklore to it, it sounds like.
Or that might have been the made-up part, too. By this guy.
Yeah, you're not even wrong. You're not even wrong. Yeah, I know I read all this the other day. I don't remember specifics. I remember that it's just like something about it being just a beige serpentine thing with tiny legs or something.
Got it. Well, if I ever go to Bear Lake, I'll keep an eye out for it.
Yes, you do that. So, the next one, sea serpent, in the folklore of some regions on the Pacific coast of North America, and its nickname is Caddy. And the reason I picked it is because Caddy is short for Cadborosaurus wilsi. That's right. We're bringing in the bionomial nomenclature, this cryptid has a genus and species name. And isn't that just delightful?
Cadbrosaurus is something, isn't it?
I don't know much about it because there's not much here. It's a
so
serpent
Cadbrosaurus,
thing. But
there you go. Cadbrosaurus is basically a serpent with a horse head that lives in the ocean.
It's a water horse.
Well, I gathered that much.
And there's a picture of it. I forget. There's supposedly a picture of it, and I think the picture is just like a piece of kelp. I think.
I'm looking at it right now. Yes, Eric, it's definitely a big piece of dried up kelp.
It's the one that's on a boat, right?
Yep, it says side view of the Naden Harbor carcass. Oh yes, the kelp carcass.
Can I see
let me
kelp?
grab this for you guys.
Yeah, so they in essence caught a Cadbrosaurus. I don't know if it was alive or dead when they caught it. It might have been a net or something. They brought it on a boat and they took a picture of it. But
I'll get the links to these two pictures and I'll put them in the description.
Yeah, there it is. It's just like a weird shaped piece of kelp where one of the end is vaguely horsey shaped, and it's the rest of it's just like long. Or maybe it's something else. I'm not too sure. But regardless whether it's kelp or not, I don't think it's an animal.
I mean, at that size, even if it was a body, I'd just be convinced it's an oarfish or something.
Yeah. And it'd have to be a really shriveled, uniquely decomposed body.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there you go. That's
and again,
pretty much
it's one of those things where,
it's
granted, this picture is clearly old, but the detail is just not there enough to really make a solid idea as to what it is.
That's true.
When I first looked at it, I couldn't tell if it was kelp or not, but then I looked at the middle section, I saw the wavy, all the little different segments of it, I'm like, that's fucking kelp. it's just totally kelp.
Yeah. I don't know if it's kelp or not, but it's definitely I don't think it's an animal.
There's also a whole bunch of animals identified as common candidates for things misidentified as Cadbrosaurus, mainly sea lions, oarfish, basking shark, and pipefish.
What about the swimming horses for the horse head?
Oh, well, don't ask questions. We're gonna have to take you away.
Maybe the horses are in cahoots with the oarfish. And
I think this is a conspiracy worth investigating.
Yes.
So,
this is a super random comment that's just completely unrelated, but I just remembered and I forgot to mention at the beginning of the video. But if you're wondering why there was a really big gap between episode 2 and 3, it's because David and I literally went out to visit Eric and Gibson in Washington.
Yes.
So we were doing that for a good while.
What?
It was amazing.
Random tangent. I love it.
Yeah.
Well,
what an off-topic random tangent that
because
no one was
I
wondering.
do want them to know that I want to keep episodes coming in a little bit more consistent than that, but we had a big vacation that happened.
That is true. We did
just
have... Yeah, because, gosh, we recorded the last one like on the beginning of July, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Ago.
Yeah.
We suck.
Anyways,
welcome to reality.
What's your next one, Gibber?
Yeah, I've got one more, and this one I picked just out of... mainly location and design, and it's just so something. So this one is called the Ningen, and it says I'll just read off. I'm gonna do a big brain academic and just read straight off Wikipedia here. In modern Japanese folklore, the Ningen is an aquatic humanoid creature reported to inhabit the sub-Antarctic oceans. So already, this one really stuck out because it's an aquatic humanoid in the sub-Antarctic oceans.
What's sub-Antarctic?
So, the sub-Antarctic oceans are basically the oceans around Antarctica.
Okay.
It's Japanese.
Yeah, apparently it's in Japanese folklore. I'm not entirely clear on how that works.
So it's not quite Antarctic oceans.
What?
That's what sub-Antarctic is?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, it's got Antarctic in it, which means it's got to be around Antarctica. Otherwise, it'd be subarctic.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it is commonly considered to be a cryptid, a mysterious animal whose existence or survival is disputed and unsubstantiated. And this thing, I could describe the typical descriptions to you, but you guys just need to see this artist's impression because I love it. This is one of my favorite creatures I've ever seen. We're definitely gonna have to link this image.
Oh my god! What the fuck is that? That is fucking incredible!
We cannot describe this. Aiden has to put a link to this video. I refuse to describe this.
I
They
refuse
need to
to
see
describe
it.
it. Yeah, no, this
It looks
needs to
so
see it.
sad and cute, and it's great.
Oh my god!
There's definitely emotional issues going on with this guy.
This is not. I had an image in my mind of what it might look like, and this is not even close.
This is incredible.
This is miles off.
And I'm just imagining spotting this thing walking on the seafloor, and it's amazing. Just
I have an
sadly
announcement.
walking.
What did you call this thing?
It's called the Ninjen.
The Ninja. I have an announcement. That's my new favorite cryptid right there. The Ninja. That thing is incredible.
So I'll describe it to you now. The Ninjen is described as a whale creature, but has anatomical similarities to humans. The creature has a face, and in some stories it is said to have extremely large limbs and or arms and hands.
This is such a simplistic design, but it gets it down.
Yeah, and there's other ones. I looked
see
it
a
up.
lot. All the points. I'm like, yeah, I can kind of see that aspect in this design.
Yeah. And there's a lot that seem to have it with more of a mermaid kind of body style. Oh my god.
I like this one better.
I like it better too. Look at this. He's been spotted in the wild.
Oh my god!
Someone photoshopped him into a little glacier there.
Oh my god! That's fucking awesome. That is so incredible.
Okay, I just love how this podcast has become. We look at strange thing and react to it.
And
no
well, the final thing I want to bring up is that our banner on our other channel, Akpot CDs, where my face has been photoshopped onto a creature, I'm pretty sure that is one of the common depictions of this thing, because when I look it up on Google Images, I get a lot of variants of that Photoshop. And let me look at the channel again just to make sure.
Oh, you mean the thing that your face is on?
Yeah.
So let me find Akpot CDs here because I
Again,
want to
that's
look at
very
it again.
I like this version far better.
Yes.
Honestly,
that is exactly the same
The artist's
image.
interpretation on the top was an amazing beginning. I don't know if I like the caught on tape picture better. It's just so incredible.
I
We'll
like
make sure to
the
link
first
both.
one better, but the caught on tape one is it's like they took it and made it real, and I'm just like, this is beautiful.
Caught him with his
fucking
pants
incredible.
down, man.
I mean, it's
All right,
clearly
so,
fake. You can tell by looking at it that it's not a real thing with the ice and stuff, but still.
I love his
love it.
feet. In the first picture, his feet are just fucking awesome.
I can't unsee. It looks to me like he's an old Native American woman with braids, but the braids turn into legs. That's kind of what I see. You know?
Oh my god! Oh my
see
god! I fucking see it! Holy
It's
shit!
very specific, I
And
know,
I love
but
how
it's
the
very
feet
vivid.
are almost intangible. They actually don't look like they're really connecting with the ground. It's just
He's
it's
a
so fucking
spiritual
great.
being.
It's a spiritual being.
Oh my god.
Fucking incredible. I
Okay,
can't
I need
see
to
the
look
Native
more
American
into
woman
this
now.
thing. This is great.
That is incredible.
Oh my god. But yeah, here, let me, as a final image that you can link and stuff, here's the...
How can I top this?
I don't know,
have
but...
that one thing, that
That's my only thing I think could possibly top it.
Okay.
Well,
We'll
my
get
thing's
to
a
that.
little
I want
bit
to
more-
cover it last. So we can go to Aiden next.
Okay.
Oh, okay, that's that thing. Okay, that's supposed to be the ninja.
Yeah, that's an alternate body style for you. It's
I've
not as
definitely
good as
seen
the
that
other
picture
one.
a million times, yeah.
No, it is not as good. It's far creepier looking, which I don't like.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I like how derpy the original looks.
So, in stark contrast to the ninja, the one cryptid that I really wanted to focus on is one that I actually discovered from possibly my favorite River Monsters episode. And the reason I want to talk about it is because I'm just I fucking love the amount of detective work that Jeremy Wade went through to piece this together, and just how ridiculous of a cryptid it seems at first, especially comparing it to the other cryptids we talked to before, and just how ridiculously explainable all of it is, and also just finding a culprit for it. And so it's vaguely a cryptid. It's kind of very folklory. So there's this, I forget exactly where it is. It's in the episode Canadian Horror of River Monsters. And so if you're interested in watching it, then do that. And if you don't want spoilers, I'll spoiler tag it down.
Oh, I might know what this is about, but I also might not.
Okay. So basically, the legend goes that there's this big serpent creature that is in this lake. We're just gonna call it the lake monster because I think that's all they called it there. They might have had a vaguely different name, but they just called it a lake monster. So it's this serpent that is known to like grab kids and people and take them into the water and eat them. It has been seen sticking its head above the water with its very reptilian face, like actually lifting its head above the water. It could sometimes be upwards of 20 or more feet. It's got the serpentine, very long body, and it lives in this lake with all these people. And also, there's this one rock in the middle of the lake called Spirit Rock, which apparently the lake creature would reside around. And people would go to the rock and offer it like the spirit's tobacco or whatever to try to like tame like this one like spirit that was there, and hopefully I think that was supposed to be in connection with the lake monster somehow. Either way, so Jeremy Wade looks into this like giant lake, right? Because he's like, okay, what the fuck lives here? And really, the only predator that actually lived there in the waters was the muskie, which is a pike fish. And for obvious reasons, it doesn't fit the bill in a variety of ways. I mean, for one, these things max out at like 3 or 4 feet. Maybe like there's accounts of people finding ones upwards of 6 feet. That's still a long shot short, and it's just a fish. It's not this giant lake serpent. But he found an account of a very verifiable account of a kid actually getting attacked by a muskie. That it bit their foot and damaged them. I think there was like a doctor's like report or picture or something of the wound that confirmed it was a muskie that bit the kid, and it was a really big one that attacked the kid. It was actually apparently dragging him. Like the kid was actually getting dragged into the further into the water, and then it let go. And so this was kind of like the first point where it's like, oh shit, okay, these guys are really mean. If you've seen a muskie, they have nasty mouths. I mean, these guys are fucking monsters. Where it starts getting a little bit more interesting, though, with all of its other behavior, is that muskies have actually been photographed. It's a rare behavior, but they've been photographed lifting their heads above the water's surface. And they actually will have their mouths open sometimes, so you can see all their teeth and everything. It's a really weird behavior, but the fish actually do it. They lift their heads above the water, which lines up with the lake serpent, having its head literally lifting and breaching the surface, and they'd see like this reptilian-looking thing sticking its head out of the water. Now, the final big challenge is just the size of this thing. One, it's not serpentine at all, and they're not that big. However, when you go to the breeding season, everything changes. Because not only are they really aggressive and defensive over their children, which could explain a lot of the aggressive attacks and everything, but also these things, they actually have been observed trailing each other in parallel, or not in parallel, but in like a line. Like one would follow another, and they're closely following each other, upwards of like 3 or 4 individuals. They're all trailing each other during the breeding season. And when and there was a guy that Jeremy Wade had come in contact with who was describing one of his encounters with a muskie, where he thought he saw this massive, really long muskie, but then as they got closer, he saw their bodies separate, and it turned out it was like 3 of them all following each other in a line. And he was like, but it looked like a giant like serpentine fish when they were just coming up on it. And so all of this like behavioral stuff, this massive serpentine monster lifting its head above the water and actually grabbing and taking people into the water, attacking them, whatnot, all of them actually have verifiable and scientifically proven accounts backing up the fact that muskies do all of that and could actually literally explain this giant
That
lake
is
serpent.
so cool.
Also, he struggled, I'm going to spoil the episode big time here, but he struggled to catch a muskie the entire episode because they're actually known as the fish of 10,000 casts. and because they shake their lures off really well. They're super smart, and they can throw a lure out really easily. And he finally caught one when he went to Spirit Rock, the place where it was like suggested that this thing might be lingering around. He actually literally caught one right there off the end of it, and it was like after all of this frustration and everything, and it was a really cool climactic moment, and it just like happened to be at the spot where everybody was kind of talking about it, which was kind of cool. So I just thought that was like, that's one of my big reasons why I just love River Monsters. That episode just kind of encapsulates like just how much you can actually connect to little fragments of the truth with like a big weird cryptid like that. I mean, obviously this is a little bit more folklore-y, but people were still actively seeing and having sightings of this thing nowadays.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and that is really, really neat to me. Just that there's such a great like explanation for it that just makes so much sense, even though you don't expect it at first. It just fits so satisfyingly.
Yeah, that's one thing I haven't watched River Monsters in a long time. That's one thing I do like about it. It's compared to so many other freaking, because River Monsters is a cryptid show. I mean, it's not chasing classical cryptids, but it is a cryptid show. But what I liked about it is how, unlike so many other ones which are trying to find it being real or all that kind of stuff, you know, Jeremy Wade already goes under the very skeptical approach of this isn't a this is probably just an animal. Yeah. And then he goes and he tries to find
just debunking reputations of animals. Like his piranha episode is not about a cryptid. It's literally just trying to prove that piranhas aren't as bad as people think they are.
It's about the cryptid of piranha's reputation.
And though I don't necessarily always 100% agree with the stuff he comes up with, I will say I do respect him for not being a kook. Being at least a logically thinking person who is actually curious and wanting to figure out what is up with this stuff, and of course also catching cool fish that I didn't know about. I've learned a lot of stuff from River Monsters. I haven't watched it in a long time, but I know about a lot of fish because of it.
Yeah, but anyways, that's the main one I wanted to share.
Do you want to share your other ones, or?
Well, the only other one I really wanted to bring up, I mean, there was two other River Monsters ones, but like we're running quite a while on the thing. I want to get to your
this
stuff.
One's it's going for a bit.
Yeah, so if I want to bring up anything else, I just want to bring up the bunyip, because I fucking
yeah.
I wanted you to bring up the bunyip. If you weren't going to bring up the bunyip, I was going to bring up the bunyip.
Yeah, like. So I'm going to tell you a little story, because I actually had no clue that the bunyip existed until Godzilla King of the Monsters came out, and then one of the, like, because all the, like, monsters that or all the titans that you see or don't see in that movie that are not classic, like, Toho kaiju, so, like, besides Rodan, Mothra, and King Ghidorah, and Godzilla, obviously, all the other titans are, like, based off of, like, real world mythological or cryptid figures and whatnot. They're named after them, and so they're all, like, you know, just titan versions of that. Like, there's Behemoth, and there's Methuselah, which is a religious, like, figure for, like, some creature or dude that, like, lived, like, forever or whatever. And then, like, there was one in, like, one of the ones you don't see on the big map. Like, there's even Mokele Mbebe that's in the Congo or whatever.
Yeah, I think the Loch Ness Monster's on it too, right?
It's not called the Loch Ness Monster. It's called something else. But yeah, it is in Loch Ness. There's a titan there. And I forget what it was called. But down in Australia, there's only one, and it was called Bunyip. And I'm like, what the fuck is a bunyip? That's fucking awesome. Like, that name is just hilarious. And so I looked into it, and I mean, I was like really entertained, but also kind of disappointed by the fact that, like, bunyip is nothing. It's
nothing and everything.
Which is also kind of great, because I really just loved the name to death, and it was kind of great not having to put a definite, like, visual to it, because I just love the name so much. Now I can just think of it as a name, because it really is, like, just like, it's kind of like the boogeyman of cryptids for Australia. Like, any kind of swamp monster or anything coming from the water can be a bunyip.
It's got Chupacabra syndrome, but more extreme.
Yeah.
It's
it's not diverse in appearance. It's just everything and nothing all at once.
Yeah.
It's so I've seen green goblin looking ones. I've seen lake
Giant
monster looking ones.
toadman.
I've seen seal looking like little ones. I mean, it's so many. It can be basically anything that you want the bunyip to be. And what I love about it is obviously someone who does live in Australia. It's hard for me to confirm this, but I've heard that in Australia, it's a very basically everyone in Australia has heard of the bunyip. It's kind of like their Bigfoot in a way, kind of like how everyone in America, well, probably the world knows what Bigfoot is. A lot of people in Australia know what bunyip is.
Or for them, the Bigfoot is the Yowie.
Yeah. But I think I could be wrong, but I think the bunyip's probably their most popular cryptid, despite being
it certainly seems
kind
to
of
be the
everything,
most offhandedly
because
mentioned one.
it is also, from my understanding of it as well, a very as you could probably tell by all the depictions, a very tongue-in-cheek cryptid. Like, not a lot of people actually think it's real. It's just kind of a thing that everyone knows about and vaguely knows what it is.
Yeah.
It's pretty great. The only
it's
real
delightful.
connection that it always has is that it lives in the water. But other than that, it can kind of be everything.
I typically imagine as being like a weird swamp monstery thing of some sort. Very specific,
I am partial
I know.
for some reason to a seal-like depiction of it. I don't know why, but that's kind of when I hear the word bunyip, that's what I think of.
I always imagine like a weird mix between like a frog and an anglerfish.
Yeah. Again, this shows perfectly its diversity. The fact that all of us, when we hear the word bunyip, think of very different things.
Yes. I mean, I think of that just because I literally like thought of my own version of what I think it would look cool. So I made it up. Like, I'm not actually basing it off of anything. I just made up my visual that I like to pair with the bunyip name.
Nice.
Well, there you have
Name-wise, the bunyip is my favorite.
Oh,
bunyip does have a
yes.
great name.
Yeah, it's just so amazing. But anyways, Eric, did you want to do a couple of yours?
Yeah, I'll do a couple of mine. I'll just do two because I kind of realized that the one I was going to talk about, the Ogopogo that lived in Lake Okanagan, is kind of just your stereotypical lake monster. It's kind of the same thing as like the Bear Lake Monster, where it's just it's a monster in the lake.
It's a lake creature.
Serpent.
Yeah, it's kind of like that, or Champ. I don't know if you've heard of Champ. Champ's
yes,
like
I know Champ.
North America's version of the Loch Ness Monster, lives in Lake Champlain. That kind of a thing. Not too much to talk about there. So I'm going to talk about the other two. First off is one that Gibson brought up in his giant Bigfoot list, the orang pendek. So the orang pendek is a cryptid said to live in Indonesia. And it is widely agreed by a lot of cryptozoologists or skeptically thinking people. If you were to ask a lot of cryptozoology thinking skeptically people, what cryptid do you think is most likely to be real? From my understanding, a lot of the times the orang pendek is the answer.
Interesting.
Because, first off, it lives in the jungle. That's a good point for it.
That's
Pretty
a good
place
start.
to hide.
That's a good.
I mean,
it's a lot better place to hide than America.
Not only is it a good place to hide, but it's the second most verifiably effective hiding spot on planet Earth in terms of like how many species that are very big that we didn't know existed before a relatively recent
And it's
time.
not supposed to be that big either. It's supposed to be like fairly small, like 3 feet tall or something like that. Which we have found mammals and stuff, even recently-ish, that big before in jungles. Not just anywhere, in jungles. So that's a point for it. There are some there's some actually good scientists who say that they've seen it and who think it's real. Now, of course, just because you're a scientist doesn't necessarily mean that's always right, because, there are still some scientists who don't think birds are dinosaurs, you know?
No, I believe everything Jack Horner says.
It's a point. Jack Horner doesn't say that stuff, Gibson.
No, he's just giving an example.
No, I was just throwing out a random example.
Oh, okay, cool. I just wanted to be sure you weren't saying that he himself is claiming that. I wanted to be sure.
No, he just claims other things that are dumb.
Anyways, I don't know a lot of the evidence for it and stuff, I gotta be honest. But I just know that a lot of people talk about it. Like, there's been, like, some footprints and sightings and stuff. There haven't been any video stuff of it, but a decent amount of people say that if there's, like, one that's real, it might be the Orang Pendek. Now, obviously, I don't know a lot about it, so I can't really confirm whether that's some good, high-quality justification. But there you go. But before I get to my final one, just because I thought of it while I was talking, I want to substitute the Ogopogo for my obscurish cryptid with the thylacine, just because I want to bring up the thylacine.
Oh, yeah.
That's a good idea. We should do that.
So the thylacine this is a really interesting cryptid because it's a cryptid of an animal that we know existed. Like, the thylacine, also known as the Tasmanian tiger, did exist, but it is largely thought it went extinct in the 30s.
Around the same time that the man's ability to multitask went extinct.
Yes. And
Eric's just like, okay.
Okay. It went extinct in the 30s, but ever since then, people are still reporting sightings of thylacines and claiming that thylacines are real. Now, of course, the issue with a lot of these sightings is that thylacines are a very dog-like marsupial, and so it's very easy to mistake them for a dog or a red fox, because Australia and Tasmania do have red foxes, or possibly a dingo, or heck, even a cat or a quoll. A quoll is a marsupial that lives in the area that's related to the Tasmanian tiger.
How even mentioned a ginger child bent over and crawling on the ground.
Oh, that's the most obvious
that
culprit.
Could also work. So there's a lot of things that you could obviously mistake a thylacine for, and again, it lived on the island Tasmania and stuff, and I kind of think that, though, yeah, I think the claim that, because there are animals that have been declared extinct and then are found later. Did they not live on the
mainland of Australia?
They did, but dingoes drove them to extinction. When people got there and dingoes got released, the dingoes outcompeted them. They only survived on the island of Tasmania because there's no dingoes there.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so the mainland thylacines went extinct like 2,000 years ago, something like that.
Noted.
3,000 years ago. Yeah, so they're on Tasmanian stuff. So, but the longer that time goes on that you haven't found them, it kind of gets more unlikely that they're still out there. Like, if you were still looking for thylacines in the 50s, sure, yeah, do that. You know, your
Makes
chances
perfect
are
sense.
maybe more likely. Because they were elusive-ish animals. I will give them that. They were not like a big, always out in the open animal. But it's been like 80 years since they were proposed extinct. Probably closer to 90 now. Like, it's been a long time and we haven't found any. Like, to me, I think it's just been too long, right? I mean, even if there
At
were
this
still
point,
some
it's
that
getting
survived
less
past
credible.
the 30s, you know, like, even if you were to claim, like, there are some thylacine sightings from the 50s. Like, I'm like, yeah, sure, maybe that was a thylacine. I don't think that's super crazy that they could have been surviving even then. I think the claim that they're alive now is definitely pretty unlikely. I struggle to believe how they could have survived this long. It's not like people in Australia and Tasmania don't know about them. Like, everyone knows what a thylacine is. I would think that someone would have found and reported one by now. A legitimate
There's been
sighting.
reports of stuff, but yeah, it's on a little side note, this is reminding me that there was this, I don't remember the name of the turtle, but in China, there was like they had this turtle in captivity, a male turtle, and he was like supposedly the last male turtle of the species, and they had found a female, and so they brought them both into captivity and tried a breeding program. I didn't remember ever hearing about like how it ended up, but like it's pretty depressing that like, you know, I mean, obviously they found a female, so it's not completely ridiculous that there could have been one or two other ones out there, but like effectively those were the last two of their species on the planet. And that was kind of depressing to think about, just seeing that on the video. Just like, wow, that's sad.
Yeah. I think I could be wrong on this. I don't remember that well, but I think I vaguely remember hearing that one of them died, but then they found another one.
I did remember something in the back of my head. I wasn't confident enough to say anything about it, but something in the back of my head did remember two females. So I don't know if
I'm not going to say that is what happened, but that sounds vaguely familiar to me.
Yeah, so I don't know.
But yeah, it is pretty sad. But who knows, you know, you could find another one. You know, animals are found, like, I don't know if you heard of the black-footed ferret, but that lives like in the American Great Plains. They were declared extinct, but then a population of like 18 of them was found.
Damn.
And then
Hardcore.
They were saved and stuff. They brought them all into captivity, all 18 of them, and they bred them and stuff, and then they released them out, and now there's like 600 of them or something like that.
Oh, fucking awesome.
They're doing a lot better.
Damn.
That's great.
But yeah. But anyways, now that we've passed the thylacine, to start wrapping up the episode, I want to bring up my final cryptid. Which...
I need to know what this is.
Yeah.
So this is called the drop bear. And the drop bear it lives in Australia. So like the three Australian cryptids are the yowie, the bunyip, and the drop bear, right?
We've covered them all.
So they're the big ones. I'm sure there's more, but they're the big three.
This has turned out to be an episode for Australians.
Yes.
Indeed. So the drop bear is a carnivorous koala that
is my God.
It's in the trees, and it drops down on people and like eats them or attacks them and stuff.
Oh my God. That's incredible.
This is literally...
So imagine a koala but with giant teeth. And that is what a drop bear is.
I was actually going to say this is like my nightmare, but no, it's not. This is actually my dream come true because it's a koala that's not useless.
I knew that you were going to like it. I knew you were going to. Look at this image, though, that I found.
Oh my God! Look at his hands coming out. It's about to drop kick them.
It's a drop bear in action.
Oh,
put this image in the video.
And of course, it's going for the elderly dude. It knows which one's the weakest. He'll put up the least fight.
Oh my God.
Where'd it go?
This has not disappointed. This is amazing.
I don't know what else to say about the drop bear. Hold on.
I'm just envisioning it just leaping out of the tree, just wee bonk.
But I would also like to say that there's two different versions of the drop bear. There's this one, which is the normal size one, the common drop bear. Then there's the mammoth drop bear, which is like 10 feet tall.
Oh, so the normal drop bear is like literally just a normal koala. It's just carnivorous?
Yeah. Well, it's bigger than a normal koala, but not like a lot bigger.
Okay. It's just a juiced koala.
And then the other one, like, it could drop out and just open its mouth and engulf you in one bite.
Yes. Oh my!
That's fucking amazing.
The drop bear is a quality cryptid. It's so simple in design, but it's great.
Somebody fucking like the mammoth. The mammoth drop bear is just like when the drop bear gets the jaw tighten.
Oh yes, yes it is. Oh my God. This is beautiful. I'm so glad that we've done this episode, guys. because I learned what a drop bear is, and I got to tell you all about the Ningen.
The Ningen.
So vote in the comments below. What do you think is better, the drop bear or the Ningen?
Yes, if you've made it this far, tell us your preferred cryptid.
I was really confident I was gonna like the Ningen more than the drop bear, but honestly, just by this like character arc of actually discovering a useful koala is actually compelling me a little bit more than I thought.
Yeah, because have we talked about Aiden's koala thing on the podcast before? Should we give a brief explanation?
No.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so to sum it up, I fucking hate koalas. Like,
There you go.
I get it. Like, some people think they're cute. I don't really think they're particularly cute, at least not all of them. And I think they're remarkably overhyped, and the fact that we really like them, I don't see it. I think they're an embarrassment and a perfect example of how evolution is not deliberate and how it is quite useless sometimes.
Imagine walking up to a koala and being like, "You are an example as to why evolution is non-deliberate."
I think that I wouldn't hate them. I'd feel a little bit more pity for them if they weren't so popular. It's kind of one of those things, like, they're so popular, and I'm like, what the fuck are you like, look at it. It asked for this. It's eating a plant that has no nutritional value. It has no, like, these things don't even really drink water. They get most of their water from the fucking plant. There's, like, no water in it. And it's poisonous. It's made it explicitly clear it doesn't want to be eaten. If you want to know, like, all the horrid things about koalas, go watch Ziff Frank's video about marsupials and wait till the end, and you're going to get a real treat. Because that just kind of sums everything
I was going to say a joke from the video, but I think you should just watch the video. I won't even say the joke anymore. You need to experience it.
He delivers it so perfectly, so I'm not even going to say anything. But yeah, this is a huge joke amongst our friends group because, like, I'm notoriously, like, besides humans, my least favorite animal is koalas.
Well, there you have it. Thank you all for watching this insane episode. This one was pretty darn long.
I think our longest one yet, but we'll see.
Yeah, and we talked about all sorts of fun stuff. So, if you've been a fan of this podcast...
I hope that we've made you go, wow, these are pretty interesting, and maybe you'll go and learn more, because we have just basically we skimmed the very tip of the iceberg. Like, there's a lot more to everything that we talked about here. There's a lot more to talk about, even ones like Bigfoot that we were on for a while about. By zero means even close to a comprehensive coverage of all the information there is to learn about them.
And we should have mentioned this earlier in the episode, but I'm going to mention it now. We plan to have, at least right now, we have the idea of following this up. Eric's going to college right now, so we don't know when we'll get the chance to do it, and we'll be able to do another episode with him. So the next few episodes will probably be just Gibson and I. But whenever we get the chance to do it again, we want to do a cryptid tier list video. So we're literally going to take and rank the cryptids in a tier list. So if you guys have, like, besides, I think we'll just naturally we'll do all the cryptids in this video pretty much. But any other ones or ones you particularly want us to include in it, tell us in the comment section.
Literally say anything. Even if you're like, I'm not too sure if this. Even if you're like, I'm not too sure if this is a cryptid, just throw it in there. If you want to throw I don't know, freaking night furies or ogres,
if you want to put Bill Cosby in there, just do it. Like,
we don't care.
Add to the list.
Anything. But like, we are not going to be like, ooh, we're not too sure about this one. Like, if you throw it at us, we'll put it on the list.
But yeah, whether you've been a fan of the podcast since our first episode or you're brand new, remember to not subscribe, never watch us again, and get your life together, bitch.
Go fuck yourself.
There you go. Goodbye.
Goodbye, sweetie.
Bye.